WarsawJS.
Yeah, welcome all. It's really nice to be here. It's my first time at the WarsawJS as a speaker and also as an attendant, so I'm very glad and excited to be here with you all. And yeah, without further ado, let's start with the topic of today's talk. So, remote React Native. I know the title sounds kind of clickbaity. It doesn't say much by itself, but I promise you that I'll try to guide you through all of the possible solutions that we have in the ecosystem of React Native that enable you remote code distributions and OTA, so over-the-air updates. And the goal is basically that after this talk, you'll know what questions you need to ask and what answers you need to get before deciding on any of the solutions in the ecosystem, basically. So yeah, let's start. Yeah, I'm Rafał, as Barry already mentioned. I'm React and React Native developer for almost 7 years now, and the last 3 years I spent at CallStack, focusing mainly on React Native and all things in the React Native ecosystem. And if you notice that I'm a little bit tired, that's the reason why. Last weekend I adopted a kitten from village near the Warsaw, so he's very adorable and lovely, but it's also very tiring. So yeah, let's begin. Before we start, I'd like to ask 2 questions. So the first one, how many of you are React Native developers on a daily basis? Please raise a hand. Okay, so not so many. That's good, that's good. And the second question, how many of you are web developers on a daily basis? Okay, again, not so many, but more. So, okay, let's go. And before we start talking about the remote code distribution in the React Native ecosystem, let's take a step back and look how things are looking in the most natural environment for the JavaScript language, so the web browser. So the process of uploading and releasing changes looks normally like that. The developer, you write some code, you make a pull request, there's some CI/CD checks running on that code, right? You get some peer developer to get you review of that code, and after you get the green light, you measure the changes, and after then they got released. No matter if it's like automated release or someone needs to manually upload it to server, it doesn't really matter. But that's the point in time after which basically the user, if he or she refreshes the page or like goes to the page for the first time, they will get the updated code. And it's oversimplified, of course. There's like quality assurance things that probably should be done on the staging environment before the release. Am I? Oh, no, it's only 3.5 minutes. And yeah, and like gradual release rollouts, there are all other things, but they're not the point of today's talk. The point is that the main takeaway from the web is that the feedback loop between the developer and the end user is pretty much very tight. It's instantaneous almost. And on the React Native, it doesn't look like that. Because React Native is first and foremost designed for the native platforms like iOS and Android, and because of that, it has to adhere to the rules of the native world. And let's do a similar exercise. So the developer does some changes, they go through a CI/CD stuff, they merge the changes, and here's, in the release part, is the point where things start to differ in the React Native world. So you have, like, in the native apps, the JavaScript bundle is only a small part of the app, right? Because you have to build the native binaries for each platform. And after you build those binaries, you have to upload them to the App Store, so the App Store and the Google Play Store. And before they are available for the users to be like updated or fetched, they have to go through the app review process, which is okay, and usually it takes less than a day, but sometimes there are horror stories, like I've been in a review for days and maybe weeks even. So I took a little time to basically go through the internet, and yeah, I made some screenshots of some articles. App Store review horror. Every iOS developer know that basically app review process is a nightmare. And you don't have to be iOS developer. You can be React Native developer to feel the same pain. Here's the second one. It's from the Apple Developer Forum. And you can see that it's 4 years ago, so maybe things got a little bit better, but actually they didn't, because the latest comments are from 2022. And currently, it's 21st day of waiting for iOS app to be reviewed. That sounds ridiculous, right? You have a bug fix, and it's waiting for 21 days to be received by the users. And you can see that even Wired, which is, I think it's a kind of mass media outlet about for like gadgets and so on, but they catch the thing and they written the other article, and I highly recommend that you read that article. The link's there. I guess the presentation will be available for you after the talk, because there are a few stories which are really weird. Yeah, so knowing that, in React Native world, updates are taking time and they're pain. The community, which I think is one of the best things in the React Native world, and the second thing is the ecosystem of the solutions already created and available for us as developers, stood up, and they found ways to make that feedback loop between developer and end user tighter, more web-like. So in terms of JavaScript code, obviously, because the native code is completely different story. There's no way to go around the App Store review, for example. And the solutions that I'm going to show you are pretty similar in what they're trying to achieve. And all of them started as a standalone tool solution, whatever you want to call it, to enable over-the-air updates to the main JS bundle, the JS part of the native binaries. And they all seem to kind of evolve along the way to be more feature-packed, end-to-end release monitoring, defects tracking, analytics, and all things built-in tools. But we'll not focus on those services. We'll focus only on the OTA capabilities, over-the-air updates. And the first tool is called Push. And as I said in the previous slide, it's moving to the App Center, so this more feature-packed solution. And the best thing about Code Push, at least personally, that's my opinion, is that it's really easy to integrate into standard React Native apps. You can do it without need to integrate any other App Center service, if that's your wish. If you only want to use Code Push, that's no problem. And besides JavaScript, it also handles updates to the static assets like images and videos. And it ensures that the user, after seeing that there's an update, only fetches the things that are actually needed. So they are saving the network traffic. And okay, let's look how to configure it. So first, of course, you need to create App Center account to get the deployment keys and organization name and app name and so on and so forth. So you need to sign up there and create a project for your app. Then you obviously need to install the NPM package, the client SDK that you have to integrate into your app. In Code Push, you also need to modify some native files, so the respective Android and iOS files, and initialize the SDK there, because the updates are happening even before the React Native is initialized in the app. It's all happening at the app startup time in the native layer. And the last thing is basically that you need to wrap the root React Native app component with the hierarchy function provided by the Code Push SDK, and voila, you're basically set. You can do some commits, some updates, and run this last comment, and the changes should be available on the next relaunch of the app. So that seems easy, right? The second solution is Expo/ES update, and it's designed with Expo in mind. So you should use it if you use Expo, but if you are working on a standard React Native project, which does not use Expo, you can still add some additional configuration to the app and use it with a React Native app, not an Expo app. They call it bare React Native projects in their documentation. And a very nice thing about the Expo update is that it's two things. Basically, the first thing is like in Code Push, it's the client SDK that you need to integrate into the app. And the second thing is that Expo update is actually a protocol. So it's very thoroughly documented, and the specification is really nice. It's updated every time there are changes by the Expo team. And what does it mean? It's that you can use that protocol to create your own server or service to provide the React Native app with the updates. So you don't have to rely on the Expo services, the ES update, in order to make it work. So you're like completely on your own. You have to invest time and money into that, but you can just not use the ES services. And one of the reasons why you might want to do it is, in contrary to Code Push, which is free, the ES update has a free tier of 1,000 monthly upgraders. They call it upgraders. But after that, after you're going above that limit, you have to pay basically. So yeah, but it's good that they give you choice, right? And yeah, the configuration, it depends on the fact whether you're using Expo or a non-Expo app. So I'm not going to dive too deep into the details. Please refer to the documentation on the Expo site, because I believe it's really nice to work with, and it's so much better than the Code Push documentation, to be honest. And as usual with the Expo packages, they basically they have a much better developer experience. So if you're having an Expo project, you don't need to configure any native files, because the package will take care about it itself. And the last thing basically that you need to do is create ES account. Please remember that there's a limited free tier. And yeah, that's also pretty simple, right? And there's a third thing. But before I talk about that, I have another question. And this question is as follows. Have you ever heard about micro frontends? Please raise hand if you did. Okay, so many people. For those who didn't hear about the micro frontends, it's like taking the concept of microservices from the backend and like translating it over to the front-end area. So you have a lot of mini apps, let's call them mini apps, or like small pieces of reusable UI and functionalities that you can share between apps, and like the underlying technology and architecture will take care for ensuring that everything works together well. And yeah, so many of you heard about micro frontends. It's a buzzword, but it's only available for the web, right? And that's because the Metro bundler, the underlying packager for the React Native, in the end of the build process, it produces single JS main.js bundle that then is embedded into the binary. There's no code splitting because of that. There's no lazy loading available in the production builds, at least. So that historically meant that micro frontends architecture is not available in the React Native world because of those things that I said before. And that has changed. And this is the reason why. So Zamotany created this package, this toolkit, and it was later taken by Kuba Romańczyk and me, and we are maintainers of this project. We're working on it as a part of open source R&D and maintenance program at Callstack. And yeah, what it is. Basically, Webpack is meant for web, right? But at the same time, it's very flexible. So you can tweak the configuration of the Webpack and its internals, and if you know them very well, and if you know the internals of the React Native itself very well, you can make Webpack work in the React Native environment. And Repack gives you this like configuration primitives to enable swapping out the Metro for Webpack. And if you have React Native app built with Webpack, you have access to the vast ecosystem of plugins and loaders already existing in Webpack. And one of the plugins is Module Federation plugin. And right now, you can use Module Federation inside React Native apps, which means you can basically use micro frontends in the React Native apps. And this is huge, although it's not the same thing as Code Push and Expo Update, because they take care of updating the main bundle, whereas Module Federation will only give you the over-the-air updates capability of updating the pieces that you're using as a federated module, so the federated modules, basically. And that might be a problem, but still, you can use code push together with repack, so you have best of both worlds. I did the experiment, and it was working. It's not officially like supported, at least that's the messaging in the docs. We might, in the future, try to add the functionality of updating the main bundle into the repack itself, so you only have one tool, you don't have to use two tools. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's repack. If you're curious about how the reference implementation of micro frontends in mobile world should look like, we have created this super app showcase repo. So I encourage you to visit that repo. We have like a few mini apps, like dashboard news, whatever, some shared modules like authentication mini app that consists of authentication logic coupled with UI that is shared between all those apps. And yeah, it basically, our aim is not to have like a boilerplate for you because it's in no way production ready, but rather like an inspiration if you want to play with this architecture. Yeah, so jumping to conclusions. In the end, there's no winner in this competition. There's no tool that is the best one because as usual in IT, it all depends, right? So the project-specific needs should dictate what tool you choose. If you have an Expo app, you probably should start with ES Update because that's the logic choice, because it will be easy to integrate. If you have a standard React Native app, so non-Expo one, you might want to give a try to code push at first to see how the dashboard feels like and so on and so forth, and only then try to use Expo updates if it does not fit your needs, basically. And as I said, these two tools, so the code push and ES updates, are pretty similar. They provide a nice dashboard to manage your releases. They provide a very nice CLI to publish the updates and so on and so forth. But the third tool, Repack, I don't recommend using it in small organizations and small projects. Only if your organization is like scaling exponentially and the teams are growing, the number of teams are growing, and you feel like the team members from different teams are starting to step on each other's toes while developing, only then you should consider moving to micro frontend architecture, so the Repack and module federation. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Regardless of whatever tool you choose, I highly encourage you to experiment with any of them or all of them, because I strongly believe that having a way to ship code as fast as possible, that basically means saving time, right? And saving time in business usually means saving money. So yeah, you should do that. And last thing I want to talk about is that we should appreciate the community of React Native and the vast ecosystem of things, because if we go a few years back, none of this would be possible. You'll have to create these solutions on your own, which will be like super hard and super time consuming. And right now you can just, sign up to one of the tools and quickly integrate it into your app. So yeah, let's appreciate the community and the ecosystem. And before we go to the Q&A, I'd like to tell you about the conference that we're holding in Wrocław on 7th and 8th of September, React Native U. That's organized by CallStack. If you scan the QR code here, you'll get the 10% discount. We'll have like community leaders, the thought leaders, and the React Native space there from Microsoft, Meta, and so on. And the last thing, if you're Formula One fan, there will be Gunther Steiner there as a guest. That's all. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Once again, great presentation by Rafał, correct? Yeah? You're a great sport also, with all the banging and the noise going on in the background. So as I understand it, you're all code pushers. Is that who I'm in the company of? That was what I got from the message. Does anyone have any questions for Rafał? Questions about the presentation, about the software, about the applications, about any of the information? Are you telling me that this man was so informative that there's not a single question left unanswered in your minds? You can, okay. I think he's a plant, however. Oh, here we go.
So you were saying about the review process from Apple and how is it a horror. So what would be your suggestion how to treat Apple reviewers with code that is pushed and that is bypassing the regular review process?
You mean if Apple will have problems
Yes.
with you pushing code via code push? So this is a valid concern, and I think it's addressed by all of these tools that I mentioned. They all have like dedicated documentation page telling you about what you should do and what you should avoid doing in order to not trigger Apple review board to ban your app or reject your app. But at the same time, in the guidelines of App Store at least, there are a few points which are making it kind of a gray area. So it's not prohibited. You can use that, but you should not ship big features using that approach. You should ship only code tweaks, small features, because they say that if you don't change the app functionality in a big way, you should be okay, basically. But if you choose any of those tools, please read that documentation page about not triggering Apple to ban your app from App Store.
Yes, code pushers and tweaking. This is the language that I understand. That was a really very interesting use of words, and also, I just think it's such powerful language, code pusher. I get it. I think I'm understanding the concept. It's very powerful language. Any other questions for Rafał? Well, in that case, Rafał, thank you very, very much for the presentation. Give him another really, really big hand.